In this video tutorial, you will be introduced to how HTML can help you with building tables in Blackboard. Let's start by looking at a regular course document and add a table to its existing content. In this content, you can see that it's just regular text with a little bulleted list in the middle. Rather than having a plain bullet list, let's convert this to a table. Using Blackboard's text editor, we can add a simple table with 4 rows and 2 columns into the content. Then we can cut and paste the existing material into the table. It sounds simple. Now notice that I did not change any of the default table settings. We'll get back to that in a moment. We can now view what we have created, having cut and pasted the material into the different columns and rows. And we can see that already the content looks a little better. But we realize we forgot to include a table heading for the columns. How can we change that in Blackboard? Using the text editor, it's near impossible. But by using HTML, we can begin adding content directly into the code and creating the table header, a new row on top of the existing table rows that we have. The codes for the tables are very simple. Every table starts with the opening table and table body command, as seen here. Next, you would add a row command for each row that you would like and include within the opening and closing row command your commands for however many columns you would like. Always remember to close your column commands before starting a new one. And always remember to end your row command before starting a new one. Then you continue adding for every one of the rows that you would like to have in your table the same number of columns. By understanding this simple structure, you can easily locate the table within the Blackboard HTML editor in order to add a new row with 2 new columns. Then we can add the appropriate headings for each column. In addition, you might want to add another column. For example, instead of having phase 1 triggering in one column, perhaps you want to have phase 1 in a column and the word triggering in another column. How do you go about doing that in Blackboard? Again, we use HTML. By toggling into the HTML source code mode, and we locate our table, we can then add a separate column into each row and edit the information appropriately. In this case, you can see I merely cut and paste In this case, you can see that I'm able to just merely cut and paste the closing column code and opening column code in front of the word triggering. And I continue this for each one of the different phases. You can see that this now looks a little bit nicer when I go back into the view mode. You may also notice that some of the columns are too narrow. In order to change this, I go into the HTML edit mode in Blackboard, and I am going to indicate that I want a particular width for each of the different columns. In this case, for the first column, you will see that I add width equals 20%. For the second column, I add width equals 25%. You can now see that it's a little tidier and more organized from a visual perspective. If you want to indent, in order to indent the table so it stands out even a little further, we can simply add the indent code, which is the angle bracket with a UL, and at the end of the table, the closing indent code. Now when you look at the table, you can see that it is customized and more visually pleasing due to the use of HTML. This makes it a little more interesting for students when they are reading a lot of material on Blackboard.